way.
The concentration, I'm sure, is pretty heavy.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll begin. So welcome to the Warm 2021 virtual conference. This is the third session of our 4-week webinar series. My name is Sarah Niemeyer, and I'm the president of the Women's Golf Alliance. Founded in 2009, the Women's Golf Alliance supports women as golfers and leaders in the industry through networking and education opportunities. So scheduling sites for competitions has become increasingly difficult in the COVID era. Golf courses are busier, outings generate more revenue, and some clubs are still limiting outside play. Today, we will learn a few strategies and hear from both the golf administrator perspective and the facility or management company perspective, considering the request to help you put your best request forward. Erin Groneveld, treasurer of the Women's Golf Alliance, will moderate our session. Originally from Arizona, Erin spent 15 years with the Arizona golf community with roles at the Junior Golf Association of Arizona, the Arizona Women's Golf Association, and the Arizona Golf Association before joining the Florida State Golf Association in January of 2021. Erin has a tremendous passion for sharing her love of the game with any and all she encounters, but holds a special place in her heart for impacting and growing the game for women. Chris Gaffney is the Director of Championships at the Metropolitan Golf Association, overseeing the championship programs for the MGA, Westchester Golf Association, Long Island Golf Association, and conducting 20 qualifiers each year for the USGA. Chris is a graduate of Quinnipiac University and started his golf career as a caddy at Garden City Country Club and his golf administration career as the USGA boatwright intern for the Long Island Golf Association. Tim Rose is Regional Sales Director and Marketing Director for Troon based in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. He helps support over 20 clubs and resorts in the Mid-Atlantic, Southeast, and Caribbean regions with their sales, marketing, and public relations efforts. So Erin, we'll begin the conversation with you. And if you have any questions to ask Chris or Tim, please type them in the Q&A feature or send them to me in the chat function.
All right, well, welcome everyone. Tim, Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So as we were talking a little bit earlier, really just kind of an organic conversation here around the sites process, how that works from both the Golf Association world and how it works from the facility side of things. You know, for most of us on this call, we're coming from that Golf Association world. And so we know the struggles that we face trying to find sites, but it's going to be really interesting, Tim, for your perspective on what we can do to help the facility side of things, make it a little easier to get a yes from that side of the spectrum. So, Chris, from the Met, if you want to take us through the process of how you go through just a basic siting from the, you know, to get yourself ready for the next year, or how far in advance you go when you're looking for sites.
Yeah, and I think for us, as Sarah said, this year I think has been the biggest challenge we've had with scheduling that we've ever had in the past. And a big reason for that is we usually pride ourselves on getting ahead of the 8 ball and trying to plan things out really far in advance. And you look at a year like this, and we really spent March through June of 2020 remaking the entire 2020 schedule, administered all our events through July, August, September, October. And then as the October came to a close, suddenly it was, oh my God, we have to recreate our entire schedule for 2021 at this point. So it can't speak to enough how challenging that is for this year, but I think there's a lot of ways that we identify sites and start to build out that process. And one of the things that we always lean on is our history. And you can always kind of look back on past hosts of championships, get a good idea of what they've done, and find some creative angles to celebrate that history. I think for us, though, the initial process really always involves matching up the golf course, specifically the yardage, the conditioning, the prestige of the golf course. Also, the facilities and the membership would be another big consideration as you start to look at what events could work at the place. So that's really the first stage for us, to start to figure out what properties we do have, what's special about them, what do they want to have highlighted, and then try to match that up with events. And a lot of that is really internally, so that we get a lot of ideas flowing. And then from there, there's a lot of other factors to put into consideration. And all of these are really things to think about before you start to go out with asks towards clubs. And a big thing for consideration is what they've done in the past. And then another part of that is what time of year works for that club. And I think that's a big one for us in the Northeast. We have a lot of great member clubs on the east end of Long Island who I could tell you immediately, no matter what event it was, if it's in July, it's going to be a no, because that's their busiest time of the year. And having that information is really helpful so that you're starting off on the right foot. I think beyond that, it's knowing that certain clubs might have an appetite for a major event, might want to host a junior event, women's event, senior event. There's a lot of different clubs that have different feelings about certain championships. So our process really takes on all of those factors, and then we start to have a nice game plan around what events could work at what clubs, and then really start to go out beyond that. So I would say that's kind of our basic process to get things started. And then from there, we kind of expand with asks and reaching out to our board members, players, and staff to try to build it out that way.
So Chris, one thing you mentioned was recognizing or realizing what a club has done in the past for you. I'm assuming that that's something along the lines of, we went to Shinnecock twice in the last 5 years. We're not going to ask them for something again because we've asked them too many times. Or, we really want to hold a specific course for our 120th amateur or some kind of milestone. So we're not going to ask them for a couple years. I mean, do you take all of that into consideration when you're looking at your citing process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first part about the making sure you don't ask too many times at the same course is very important. And everybody on the call, I'm sure, feels the same way, where you have certain clubs who want to host events every year, want to support your operations, and you feel comfortable going to them. And you have other clubs, whether it's a very high-end club for us, like a Wingfoot, or just a club who, might only want to do something every couple of years, and to make sure you're having some, I'd say, tactful conversations with them so that the ask doesn't come across of, oh my God, they're asking us to do something else again. And instead it builds up more of an atmosphere of, oh, it's pretty much time for us to host an event again, because it's been a while. I'd say the one other one too that we focused on a little bit of late too is looking at a club that may have been lost in the shuffle for hosting some major events. We had somebody host the Long Island Amateur recently who had hosted it once every decade for 50 straight years, and then they were missed in the 2010s. So that was something of, wow, you guys did this every decade for 5 decades. We didn't do one for 2010 to 2020, and then we were able to schedule something kind of right behind that because they had built a great club history around it. And I think a lot of people on our side and on the club side both didn't realize how much history there was, and to really keep that tradition going. So that's another thing we focused on in the past.
Yeah. Now, Tim, from the club side of things, when you have an association like a Met come to you and say, hey, we want you to host, or we're looking for a good host for the Met Amateur, and Chris, excuse me, I don't know what number Met Amateur you're on, but
118.
118?
Wow.
Okay, so let's say they're looking for the 120th, right? So that's a couple years out. And that's a big deal, right? The Met Amateur's got to be one of the biggest events on your calendar, if not, your most coveted event for Chris. Tim, if they have that and they know they want like the best course they can get for that, how early should they start with the club from a management side of things to get that ball rolling, to really make sure they land that great property?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it varies from club to club, but the sooner the better, obviously. In a private club environment, you could probably start a little later because they're going to take fewer outside events. If, for example, we manage a property in Naples, Tiburon, which is literally hosting its 3rd championship, the Chubb, this next week in the last 5 months. And so it's difficult sometimes for companies to be able to squeeze something in at the last minute. But it really is contingent on the appetite of that property and how much they really want to go ahead and host it. And everybody's got a different kind of motive. You might want to sell real estate, where some people just automatically think it's availability and price. A club might say, listen, I'm really trying to sell real estate, or I want to grow my membership, and this is such a prestigious event that I think it's really going to catapult us to the next level. When you're hosting a USGA event, typically that would mean excellent course conditions, superior design, all those other things that a facility has to have in order to host one of those things. So it kind of depends on the audience too. So if Chris came to me at a Met championship, that would be, obviously a different caliber course than somebody coming to me and saying, I'm going to host a junior event that may not be a USGA event. So it varies because we don't have any proprietary ownership of our property. So essentially we have 600 different owners that we, communicate to. And I would never assume that they want to or don't want to, unless they've said that in the past. Hey, listen, we're not interested in having a bunch of people drop out on our golf course. It doesn't make any sense for us. But a lot of people, depending on, because the boards switch over every couple of years, that sentiment might change. So the sooner the better. That's kind of a long-winded answer, but the more preparation you can have. And that also leads into how much, what kind of playing condition you want for the event. And how much time does the USGA, if any, need to come in and kind of prep the course. I know I've been at other facilities where we've had, a Q school qualifying, which is a long event. It's not a single day event. And so they come in and really kind of help you manicure the golf course over the course of that week, where if you're having a Monday US Open qualifying event, the USGA might come in and do some pin placement stuff, but they're not going to come in and have you over manicure the golf course for a one-day qualifying event.
Yeah. And Tim, what kind of questions from an association side, when we're either meeting with a golf course or a facility or even with the management company, what kind of questions or ways can we zero in on what it is they're looking for? If they are looking to grow their membership, how can we appeal to that with some questioning or what we bring to the table that makes it appealing to them to even want to let us come to their facility?
Sure. Chris hit on a lot of those. The more information, the better. So, is it going to be in season? Here in Florida, it's always season, but we're coming out of a high season, so to speak. So we're going to be coming, typically after Easter or Passover and in between Mother's Day, people start to go back to their respective homes if it's a second club for them. So we're going to come into a season where, not so much now, but they actually used to close clubs in the summer, at least for a certain period of time here in Florida. Other places where Sarah just mentioned are just getting started up in the Northeast and Midwest. So the more information we can get, the better. What day of the week is it? Don't always assume that it needs to be a weekend. Is there income potential? People don't necessarily say, I'm just going to give my golf course up for free, but they might have a rate that they can, there's a cap on the rate. They can't go above X amount per player. Will the course have to close down prior to the event at all? What kind of preparation will it need? Will the members have access to the clubhouse during this period of time? A lot of different questions. And it may be one of those things where, the membership, especially if it's a private club, may say, hey, that's really cool. Maybe we have kind of create a VIP experience. So the club can piggyback on the event that is happening out there and make it more of an experience for people instead of something that is actually displacing the members. When it comes to, public golf or resort golf, it's really working with our different partners. We don't manage the hotel side in most of the instances. And so we want to make sure that they don't have a big group on property. We may not have make sure we don't have any kind of a tournament or event. It's always great if you have multiple golf courses. We've got a course in Atlanta, outside of Atlanta, Chateau Elan, that has 45 holes. So essentially we could have an event and it wouldn't really impact, the other 27 holes if we wanted to have one. So it really depends on the composition of the property. The more information we get, the better. And then the PR potential is fantastic. Who's going to cover the event? Are you in a major market where the Atlanta Constitution is going to come out, or the Miami Herald, or the Tampa Tribune, or New York Times, or something like that, where they say, hey, this is a really cool event. It's kicking off the season, and you can get some really good publicity on it. So there's a lot of different factors. And I would just say that a lot of times, as a point person for a lot of the incoming inquiries, I try to articulate that to the people on the ground, just to make sure that they know all the kind of benefits that could happen for hosting an event, and then also play devil's advocate, making sure that they understand, hey, you may be losing a small amount of income, but this is the advantage of you hosting an event like this.
Absolutely. So there were a couple things that you touched on, Tim, that I'm actually going to transition back over to Chris for one of them, because we've said it a few times about busy season and how, like Tim mentioned, down here in Florida, we're starting to transition out of our busiest season. I mean, we're kind of an all year place. So it's, we're always going to be having a lot of people playing golf. But for places like the New York and metropolitan area, they, you go through a non-posting season where there's snow on the ground, there's no playing golf. So you fit what we would take as a whole year's worth of a calendar. You guys kind of squeeze that into, the short time that you have playable. So it's interesting to me, Chris, that you mentioned, I know that this is their busiest season, so we're not even going to really approach them. I would say, isn't all of your playing season every club's busiest season? How do you deal with that?
It is. That's a really good question. And I think for us, it's we always joke every year when we set staff assignments, the week after July 4th, it's USAM qualifying, it's Met Amateur qualifying. We have our junior coming up right after that. Every year we're running eight events in a 3-day span that time of year. And it's really just trying to get ahead of everything else and try to get on the schedule for those types of events. Fortunately, like an event like the US Amateur is a very attractive one to host. You get the top players, there's some good publicity around it, but the whole season is really busy. We do get great support from our member clubs, but it's really just trying to structure things around what can possibly work at the club and go from there. But it's not easy getting events in July and August, that's for sure. And that's why I think we have a strong list of clubs we know who are always willing to either get involved or want to host things, and we look for their support with those types of events. And I think there is really good support in the Met area for people understanding that that's how the schedule is. If we want to support amateur golf and we want to see these great tournaments get conducted, we have to be willing to give up our golf course in a sense for a day, 2 days during this season.
Yeah. So Chris, do you, I seem to remember, and maybe I'm confusing this with another association, is it part of a club's membership with the Met to host a championship on a rotation of any kind?
It is not. I know Sarah could probably speak to their setup a little bit more there, but we do not have that on rotation. I would love it if we did. It would definitely be helpful in certain ways, but we do not. Our board is great at giving kind of leads with our tournament committees for clubs who may want to host events. And I would say another good angle where we get a lot of insight from is our course rating team of, hey, this club just did a major bunker renovation, did a new clubhouse renovation, and trying to match up those things with one another. That maybe we have a really nice one-day hospitality event that lines up great for a brand new clubhouse. So we'll lean on a lot of that information to try to figure out what clubs can be in the mix, but we don't have a mandatory hosting obligation for any member clubs.
Yeah.
Sarah, is that something you guys have?
We do. It's, our rotation, we say that you're willing to host us once every 3 years, but it's really hard to hold clubs to that request. I think for us, because we're coming from the women's perspective, they're more likely to give us a Tuesday or a Thursday or another ladies' day and have us go out before their women's membership goes out. So that helps. But again, now you look at our group and then all of the other sister associations that are in our territory, we're all competing for the same Tuesdays. So where do you play?
It's gotta be tough.
Yeah,
Tim,
I think one thing that was said before that Tim said that I think is it's important to make sure you're communicating the event the way it is. I think for us, we have a lot of 2-day events that when we're scheduling it, it's a day and a half event. We cut to 40 and ties for the second day. And personally, I've had a lot more success with that conversation of day 2, you're going to get your members out there after 11 a.m., after 12, whatever it is. And suddenly the reception to that is day and night versus you're going to lose the course for 2 days. So Tim mentioned that, and I think it's a really good point to make sure you're selling exactly what the event is. Obviously, we all know there's some curveballs where weather comes and it impacts day 2. And it's important for everybody to be aware of that. But I think the important thing is to make sure you're selling what the commitment is, because we have a lot of clubs in our area who host USGA events, PGA Tour events, and a lot of the times will come with the championship and they start thinking that, oh my God, I'm going to lose my course for 2 weeks. No, you're going to lose it for a day and a half, and ideally you're going to see it in the best condition it's ever been and you're going to get it professionally marked, professionally set up. So I think giving the club the right expectations is helpful too, from that perspective, when we're always dealing with the busy season in the Northeast.
Right. So Tim, one of the things you mentioned was the income potential for the club from hosting one of these events. And I think from an association side, we're not so naive to think that us bringing an event to every club is going to be a moneymaker for them. You know, we often hope and are very appreciative of the fact that they're probably discounting, whether it's cart fees or drink fees, whatever it is that we're paying. We're very appreciative when those items get discounted for us so that we can offer, you know, the best pricing back out to the membership. Yep. One of the things that I used to do in Arizona was, rather than come to the club and say, I can give you $25 in greens fees, $20 a head in food and beverage, and $10 for range balls, whatever it was we were paying for. I came to the club with a lump sum and I said, you know, it's a 2.5-day event, a 3-day event, whatever it was, you have $155 per head for those 3 days. Plus, you know, I always kept the prize fund separate because that was isolated down to the prize fund. But however the club wanted to allocate that seemed to get me a little bit better reception in that if they, you know, if their food and beverage was falling short that month and the greens fees were doing well, then they could allocate some of that money over to food and beverage. And, you know, the golf shop didn't really need it that month or whatever it is. Is that a decent strategy that you think would work pretty universally, or?
Yeah, I mean, it may work universally. You know, I think all the golf courses, you know, operate slightly differently as far as that. But that's a very good point to say, listen, in totality, this is what we're going to do. We're really not going to displace that much business. You know, the second day, as Chris just said, you know, there's a cut or whatever. And part of the initiative for Troon as well is, you know, we want to grow the game. So we want to be able to introduce golf to people on a competitive level, to, you know, nice facilities. And so sometimes that might mean, I don't want to say sacrificing, because that's a poor word, but introducing the club where the club is a good neighbor for the community, good neighbor for women's golf, for junior golf, for senior golf, whatever the audience is. And I think that's important too, to look at the whole picture rather than just be myopic and say, hey, I'm looking just at the bottom line, and if it doesn't meet this criteria, then forget about it. There's a lot of different circumstances that are going to come into play. And I think Chris also mentioned a really cool factor. Hey, what if a club just did a bunker renovation, like he said? What if they just redid some, you know, the back nine and have brand new greens, or, you know, new tees on the front nine? Those are ways to go ahead and kind of showcase that, especially with people that are single-digit handicap golfers. They play a lot. They're traveling, and the public relations and the word of mouth can be substantial. So I do like that strategy of saying, hey, in totality, we're going to be able to bring this amount of revenue. Do you think it'll work for you guys based on the circumstances and how many people we're going to have out here? Doesn't mean we have to shut down the restaurant. Doesn't mean you have to shut down the practice facility. What other kind of revenue streams can they still, you know, keep open in order to kind of make it work for them? So.
Yeah. One of the things I also heard earlier, and I can't remember who said it, was creating kind of a VIP experience for the membership. I think, Tim, you may have touched on that. Has Sarah, Chris, even Tim, do you have any examples, or have you ever had any experience where you've been able to do that with a club and it was really well received and maybe made the ask easier the next time you came back around?
Absolutely. I'll jump in if it's okay.
Yeah.
I just mentioned Tiburon. They're holding a championship, a senior tour event. They hold an LPGA event, and then they hold something called the Shark Shootout. So kind of a variety of things. And during one of the events, they have a big concert. But as part of that concert, all of the members get VIP access. And last year they had Darius Rucker. So they have people of notoriety. They don't have somebody that is, you know, a no name in the hospitality industry. So whoever that is, they package these kind of things and say, yes, we understand you're going to give up your golf course for X amount of time, but here it is. Or we're going to go ahead and the club will sponsor a hospitality tent on hole number 10 or whatever it is, to say, hey, the golf members can come out, enjoy themselves, bring their family and friends. and really kind of give them front row seats, so to speak, for really cool events or behind the rope type of things where even in a practice round, you could get access to some of the players. I know it was really neat for some of the players at the LPGA event. They had a situation over at Tiburon where they, kind of gave them inside the ropes access and just be able to see how gifted those players are, how far they hit it, how nice they are, how amenable. That was a cool experience for a lot of people that played golf all their life, but not necessarily gotten up close to an LPGA player. So there's all kinds of different things, and it can be, non-endemic to golf. It can be, a dinner that's hosted, and maybe one of the participants is going to go ahead and give a 15-minute talk to the membership. Or maybe a person would go ahead and do a clinic for kids. There's all kinds of different ways that you can do it. You can, incorporate some other nonprofits, First Tee, whatever, to say, hey, we're going to do a little clinic for the First Tee. Tiburon is a First Tee host, so they'll bring some kids out, and I know they've had success, doing some different things like that. So being creative and trying to make the best, case scenario is always helpful. And the members like to feel like, hey, I get front row seats, or I get access to this. It's kind of bragging rights. And it's not all about the dollars and cents in a lot of instances.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we haven't done anything like that, but I'm just thinking if you scaled it down, maybe had an elite junior event, invite the children at the club to watch them on the range while they're practicing and aspire to become like them one day. You could do something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
go
we
ahead,
try
Chris.
to get the club involved with like live scoring to get them a little bit behind the scenes for especially like our Met Open and stuff like that. I think it's honestly been one of the tougher things for last year and this year is there's no real way to engage the membership, and you're almost turning people away. But I would say those are some great ideas. And when you're dealing with, I'd say, a smaller end event, like just getting them involved with the event, whether it be live scoring, promoting some of the players, and the spectating experience that you have as a member. It's definitely a mixed bag for us. I mean, there are clubs where we know the membership is really happy to host, but they don't want to be involved with the event. They love the prestige. And then there's other clubs who people are lining up to do live scoring. They want to be there. They want to be a part of it. I can think of a Long Island Open a few years ago where they had a keg out by the superintendent's area, and the membership absolutely loved the event. So not something we facilitated in that case, but getting the membership to understand the prestige of the event, who's playing in it. Maybe the junior angle is always a great one for the future stars out there. So I think for us, a lot of the time, it's how can we kind of have a mutually beneficial experience there and give the members a way to feel like they're a part of the event.
Yeah, and I would imagine, and most of us have big name amateurs in our area, and reviewing the entries once you've gotten them or whatever that may look like, then approaching the club and saying, hey, so-and-so's playing in this event. And we've talked to them. They've been, they're willing to come and talk to the membership. They're willing to do a trick shot session on the range or something. Might be kind of a cool way to help that.
Yeah, and I would say along those same lines, you just said trick shot. There's I've been fortunate to play in a couple pro-ams and playing with some of the probably lesser known golf professionals. Some of the younger, I wouldn't say kids, but younger professionals, they like doing that. They love to help out in different communities. So if the First Tee asks them, or some G organization or the AJGA or whatever it is, hey, can you come and do a quick clinic or talk to us about your journey in golf? You played on public golf courses growing up. What does that look like? And a lot of times they'll jump at the chance. Monday, Tuesday, and they play an early practice round and they go over, and visit with those kids. I think generally it's pretty well received if their schedule permits.
Yeah, I know a lot of places. I know Arizona did it, and I know quite a few other associations do it. Around some of their bigger events, they'll have like a junior AM or an AM, the day or two before, and you can give special pricing to the membership or whatever that may look like to help engage there as well.
Yeah, we have our pro-am before our Met Open each year, and what we always do is the next year's host, we invite out their president and a couple of them so they can see what it's like, start to get them involved in the event the year before, and then we'll do the same thing the year of, is give the host club a group to go out and play and just add some more personal attachment to everything that's going on beyond just we're hosting. So yeah, that every way you can engage the leadership at the club is always helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chris, I'm going to jump into the ever stressful USGA qualifying site process because we all know from the association world, that's one of the harder ones we have to do because essentially you're asking for a free golf course. At least that's what we're prompted to do by the USGA, is to try and find sites where there are no greens fees charged. And so Chris, I'm interested to know what your process is for that, what you approach the club with as, you know, hey, we're asking for no greens fees, but we're bringing this revenue stream instead, or whatever it may be. I'm interested to know how your USGA qualifying sites go.
Yeah, and I would say we have a very strong contingency of clubs who host those type of events every other year, every year. Kind of, I'd say the like mid-high tier clubs who are very strong, but in our area, your mid-high tier club would be the top tier in a lot of other places. So a lot of these clubs want to host those events to kind of get themselves on the same page as the Wingfoots and Shinnecocks, and to try to get some notoriety around the club. So for us, it usually starts with a certain core group of clubs. And I would say we spend a lot of time during the year just kind of getting input from other hosts and other players, professionals, on who would be interested in hosting those events. For us, like the U.S. Senior Amateur, U.S. Senior Open, U.S. Mid-Ams, typically there's somebody who plays in that event who wants to have it at their club each year because that's their chance to qualify for the championship. I think for us, for the USAMs and the US Opens, a lot of times those are the precursor to hosting a bigger event. It lets us see how the logistics work at the club, how the best players in the area handle the golf course. So a lot of the times we'll see that our US Open host this year is a Med Open host in 2 years, or a Med Amateur host in the next couple of years. And we'll try to package those type of events together, high-end USGA qualifiers with a high-end championship. It gives us a good look at logistics, gives them another great event for them to host and another feather in their cap. And beyond that, fortunately, I think for a lot of them where we're only conducting 1 or 2 qualifiers in a year, you start to get a lot of people who want to host those events. And I always look at the Mid-Ams. A lot of the Mid-Am golfers are on their golf committees at the club. And there's often times where we have somebody who at the qualifier that year will say, hey, I'd love to host it. And immediately I'm writing this down and putting that down as somebody to follow up with about it in the future. So a lot of the USGA ones definitely come from word of mouth of like, oh, we would like to host one of those. And there's definitely a different level of prestige despite it being a one-day non-revenue event. There's definitely a lot of people who want to host those. So I think we're fortunate on that side. And then it's a lot of groundwork to build out a list of clubs who would be willing to entertain those opportunities.
Yeah. Tim, my next question is for you. When we're, so for example, here in Florida, we had kind of a new event, not new in concept, but it was new to the calendar for the women here. It was our senior 4-ball that had kind of grown outside of the regular women's 4-ball. We needed our own separate senior women's 4-ball. And when it came to siting for that site, we have other senior events that we can go based on, but when we have a brand new site or a brand new tournament and we're not quite sure where we want to host it, where does the management company come in on that side? How can a management company help us when we don't have a particular location in mind, we just have an idea of what we kind of want?
Good question. I think for us, because of the size of the clubs that we manage, we're in, a little over 40 states. We're in 30 countries. I know this is kind of endemic to the United States, but now we have so much variety. And so back to what is the audience? It's a 4-ball senior. Do they want a core golf course with no real estate around it? Do they want an older traditional golf course? Do they want a modern golf course? Try to find out as much as possible. Is there a certain length that they say, listen, we don't want to go beyond 7,000 yards, or we don't want to go below 6,200 yards, whatever it is. We can then have at least kind of narrow down to a certain extent what clubs may or may not have an appetite for that. Can it be a weekday event? Can it be an afternoon event? All these different variables. I don't think it necessarily has to have a track record to say, hey, this is what it is. A lot of times they'll jump on it. Hey, we'd love to be kind of the inaugural facility to host this event. And as Chris just said, maybe it's a stepping stone to another event that is, USGA or another event in your organization that they could host. Instead of hosting, that event, they host maybe the championship level, which is a combination and it's a larger event. So all of the things matter. I think for us, it's kind of, messaging it out. Hey, I can kind of identify at least with the small group of courses that I help support. And if not, I go to my counterparts and say, hey, listen, if you're looking for a desert golf course, obviously Florida's not the spot, but I call up my counterpart where you used to live and say, hey, Chris or Dolph, what can we do in the way of golf out in Arizona or, the desert in California and see what we've got. So for us, it's having a wide variety of choices for organizations and for, USGA and different golfing, tours, so to speak.
So is that something where if we came to you with that idea and we gave you all the information and you identified some facilities, does that then come back to us and we reach out to the facilities and kind of book those things, or do you guys kind of play that middle ground for us?
Great question. I'm in the process of doing that with a couple different, and I wouldn't call them tours, but one is a nonprofit, and then one is actually going to be a USGA amateur tour that this gentleman's trying to start. So the way I've worked it, and a lot of the clubs are obviously not even in the portfolio of properties I support. I've made introductions. I've kind of set the table, so to speak, on hey, these are the parameters of what the event are. For the USGA event, which I thought was really smart on this person's part, was they're going to be Tuesday and Thursday qualifying events. So he's not going to be disruptive. A lot of them are in the Midwest, even though that's just getting into their season. But it was really smart on his part to be able to say, I'm going to identify weekday events and not say, hey, I've got to, have a weekend event. He's limiting the field just like anything else. I don't know if he's got to have, a 3 handicap or less, but all those different things matter. And so to answer your question, I help facilitate, but then ultimately, because you're not making an agreement with Troon, you're making an agreement with, green grass facilities or that private club, they would then engage and negotiate any kind of final details. I can make introductions and try to promote and help that group as much as possible. But ultimately, when the rubber meets the road, so to speak, it's going to be the facility that actually signs the agreement. And they would probably, maybe the terms of the agreement are a little looser. Instead of 60 days out, they can say, hey, we'll give you a 2-week window, and if you don't have enough players, then we can modify the event a little bit. And it's not always necessarily money; it could be the terms that are favorable that you can agree upon. So there's a lot of different variables, and I'd say, hey, nothing's off the table. And there's other people in our organization that do exactly what I do that would be happy to try to facilitate different championships or events in different parts of the country.
Aaron, I think your dogs are barking, so I'll jump in.
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself. My dogs went a little crazy.
Surprised it didn't start mine. But Aaron, I have actually a question for you, just from the women's side of things. I know often we'd ask for shotguns, and it would be a little bit easier on the club to handle an afternoon shotgun or a morning shotgun, knowing that the course would clear. And with the pandemic, shotguns have not really been permitted. So have you seen any change, Aaron, with your golf association or Chris, and some of these requests coming in that we're going, strictly, are we all tee times in 2021 and going forward? Are we going back to shotguns? Is there any chatter around that?
Yeah, for sure. For a while, we were tee time only, both in Arizona and here in Florida. Which was the men are pretty used to that. The shotguns aren't prominent in their world of golf, but for the ladies, that was a really big shift for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons we do shotguns is it allows them the opportunity for that social time afterwards, right? They can eat lunch together. We can do a a big awards ceremony with prizes handed out and everybody gets to see, and it's, you know, that's what they enjoy. But on the other side of that, one of the things that outside of the pandemic and the fact that staging carts and having people in one confined area was frowned upon from a pandemic standpoint, I actually have found that a lot of times when I've gone to a golf course and said, you know, hey, we're looking for a shotgun start on, you know, the last day or whatever days we're looking at the shotgun for, reverse shotguns seem to be something that I've had a lot of success with when I've gone to the club and said, hey, you know, I'm condensing this down onto a smaller section of the golf course. Yes, it puts more B groups on my end, which I know a lot of people aren't going to agree with me on this. I think when you have multiple B groups and sometimes more B groups in a shotgun, it actually helps your pace of play because players can see the group in front of them already, right? And so what do we always
to those who don't know what a reverse shotgun is?
Oh, sorry. So a reverse shotgun is where we start you on like 1 and we go backwards around the golf course. And so you may not have anybody starting on holes 2 through 3 or 2 through 5 or whatever that may be. And typically your leaders are going to be the ones starting on 1 and you're going to work your way backwards around the golf course score wise or handicap wise, however you're putting those pairings together. But one of the things we always talk about in our world is that pace of play, you should be cognizant of the group in front of you, right? You should always see that group in front of you. Well, if we've started everybody out with no B group and there's no one in front of them, what's their frame of reference? And so a lot of times we say, well, you can't really manage pace of play in a shotgun. I don't believe that. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I think if you condense your shotgun and you put more B groups out there, you give your players the information they need to be successful getting around the golf course. And when you reverse that shotgun, so if I go from 1 backwards around to, let's say, I don't know, 8, as soon as those people who started on 8 clear hole number 1, then the golf course is free back to the course, right? And they can start putting their memberships out. So for me, I've found a lot of success in that. We just had that, Tim and I were talking, we just hosted an event at a newly acquired Troon facility, St. John's over in the Jacksonville area. And we did a reverse shotgun. It was a little different than what I'm used to in that they put their membership out in front of our play. So they had tee time starting at 7:30. And by the time we started our shotgun at 8 o'clock, our reverse shotgun, their memberships were on holes 2 through 5. So essentially their membership ended up inside our shotgun. But it worked out just fine. Our pace of play was not terrible. It was fine. And I, you know, from a golf course standpoint, I think, and Tim, help me if I'm wrong here, I think that helps clear the course for them a little quicker and they can get play then back out onto the golf course.
Yeah, I think those kind of things are great because they show imaginativeness. And the other thing that clubs do too sometimes is there's all kinds of reciprocation with local golf courses, other clubs that you say, hey, this is a 1.5-day event, but let me call, Steve Smith down the road and we'll have some kind of reciprocal day where you guys can go play over there and they can come back at a later date. Or, you know, some of the things that at least Troon has done is they've had tee time events, but they've just, you know, kind of eliminated, for lack of better words, exactly what you said, the end kind of, you know, award ceremony. Some of them have done, you know, kind of live scoring stuff, like Chris said, via video after the event where nobody's congregating, you know, not 144 golfers. And prior to the event, just say, hey, listen, don't show up 2 hours before the event and congregate in the clubhouse. You know, go ahead, and sometimes, you know, having a tee time event works out better that way because not everybody's on top of one another. But minimizing those kind of collective group things has been helpful. But I think anything that, you know, kind of helps soften the blow, so to speak, for the members or, you know, people that are regular pass holders or whatever the composition of your property is going to be easier for them to, you know, to digest and say, hey, we're happy to have the event and would love to host another one.
Chris, when you're making a request to a club, do you start with the golf professional? Do you start with a member, go to the GM? What's your process like there?
It definitely varies. I'd say for the bigger requests, we almost always try to go through the board with the request specifically. But one thing that's always important is to make sure, especially depending on whether it's the GM, pro, or super, if they're really involved in the golf operations, that they either know the request is coming or have some knowledge of it. Typically, it's better to come from you that you're trying to do it. So I would say for our bigger events, usually it's a casual conversation with the pro GM about like, what does this event look like for you guys, or what does this time of year look like? And then try to put the official request through the board. When I'm dealing with a lot of our one-day events throughout the year, it's really whoever my best contact is or someone's best contact is. And I think everybody knows those experiences. Certain clubs, the pro might make all the decisions on the schedule, and even if you talk to the president, he's going to turn and ask the pro if they can do this. And then you have other clubs where the pro, everything he does is going to go right through either the GM or the board. So definitely lining them up, all the levels is very helpful, and having a discussion with whether it's the board first or the golf pro first, and then put the official request through the other person. It's important to make sure everybody's aware. But definitely two different sides for us. The one-day events, when we're trying to schedule 90 different qualifiers, it's really whoever we can talk to, whoever will have that conversation, and whoever makes the most sense. For the majors and bigger events, it's more of a process to make sure everything's in line before we go forward.
So now, are you starting the 2022 schedule as 21's now unfolding, or?
Yeah, we still, there's been some interesting happenings this year, as I'm sure there has been for everybody, whether it be course closings, impacts of COVID, that we still have a couple things we're trying to fix our schedule, I'd say at this point. But we've already started working on some sites for 2022. Typically now is when I would start to do a lot of those one-day qualifiers, especially USGA qualifying this time of year. Start to work on those now. And then our major championships, bigger events, we're really always working on those. And a lot of the times we'll get out 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and you'll have a couple holes in there too where you still need to fill stuff in. But yeah, majors, big events, we're going years out. 2022, typically around now is we'll start to try to build out that schedule. But it always turns into we have a lot of work to do come September, October, November for the next year's schedule.
I think we all feel that way.
Yeah, right. So Chris, when you're scheduling out, let's say 2 to 3 years in advance, or even maybe 5 years in advance, what has been your experience with courses adhering to that contract that you've put out there? I mean, we know that there's a high turnover rate in the golf professional seats. And so the person who signed that contract for you 3 years ago probably isn't even there anymore. And the new person wasn't aware that that was something that the person before had committed to. How do you guys deal with that? Because I think getting out ahead of the game, 3 to 4 years in advance is awesome. And I would love to be able to do that, but it's so hard because that turnover happens. And I'm interested to know how you guys deal with that.
Yeah, and that's where I think the boards turning over can get really tough sometimes. You lose maybe the entire board who was there and very supportive of the event. Honestly, a lot of the time it's staying in constant, like, yearly contact with the club, just little check-in saying like, hey, we're looking forward to this, or whatever it may be, just making sure there's some open line of communication. I could say for our schedule this year, we have some of the best championship hosts we've ever had. I probably called or emailed some of our hosts 3 or 4 times last year because I was at a point where I didn't believe that they were going to be able to maintain the commitment just because of everything going on. But I'd say we tend to lose maybe a club or two every few years who had committed to something in the future. But just staying in touch with them, reminding them what's going on, and always having a single source contact. And if they leave, making sure you try to find another one. So for most of our major championships, I make sure I have either a member at the club or a staff member who you can always lean on. But you do get into some challenging situations where that staff member who's been there for 30 years maybe doesn't have a great departure with the club, and you don't really have a lifeline there to make sure the commitment's still ongoing. So I don't have a specific, this is what we do to make sure it happens every time, but the constant contact, and I don't mean like every month checking in, it's the we just had a great Met-Am. We're looking forward to the Met-Am at your place next year. Make sure you flush out any potential issues with enough of a runway to deal with any of that fallout. And yeah, we have a future commitment with one of the better clubs in our area for 3 events in the next 10 years, with it capped off with the 2030 Met Open. And the joke of like, hopefully I'm still alive when the Met Open happens at the event, but happens at that club, but I'm still booking it. Yeah, you get ahead of yourself sometimes, but if we have a top 100 club who wants to host a major championship, we're not going to hesitate to book them, get that contract. We don't even deal with an official sign this contract and say you're going to host. We have our confirmation letters that we all file away for the future events, and a lot of it is hope and hope that they maintain the commitment going forward.
Wait, Chris, do you have them signing that confirmation letter, or is it just?
So most of the time, no. Honestly, it's and for us, and I don't know if it's the same for everybody, but most clubs we're at, we have significant history with, and I think there's a lot of handshake deals that we've all always operated with. And I'm trying not to say club names, but we had a great East End host who's as exclusive as it gets a couple of years ago, who I reached out to at the end after our event concluded and say, hey, we're looking forward to the event at your place next year. And he's like, that's great, but do you have a letter that says this is happening? And it was like, oh my God. So I sent him the letter and he's like, okay, great. Just needed to see the letter confirming it. And it was from 4 years ago. And it just said what the dates were and was addressed to the president. So clubs, and I'm sure it's very similar throughout the area, but clubs are very great about maintaining those commitments. And typically they just like to see the paper trail of who agreed to this, when was it agreed to, and what did we agree to. And I think the thing we all need to make sure is that we don't show up May 1st and say, hey, we're looking forward to this 3-day event in 3 months that you agreed to 5 years ago. Just make sure you're giving them some time to have all their ducks in a row when you're planning those types of events.
And save your emails. Any emails
Yeah, right.
worth saving.
Tim, on that same leg of things, when you have a club in your catalog of clubs that you manage and work with, if Chris were to reach out to a Troon facility and he schedules something directly with the pro, is there any communication back to the management company that they've done that, so that if that pro were to leave, you guys kind of have that paper trail as well?
Yeah, I've never known of something like that kind of fall through the cracks with a local event, but not a USGA event or something along those lines. I would say that absent of we lost our greens and we're just not in a position to host the event, some other extenuating circumstances, as Chris said, typically 9 times out of 10, that new GM or director of golf or whoever he or she's in that seat just kind of wants to understand what the expectations are. So if they needed to get 20 volunteers, they're not scrambling around at the last minute, or what's the prep, or is there going to be a practice round involved? But to answer your question, yeah, I mean, all of these different things are usually electronically, done, and there's records of them. I'm not aware. I'm sure it's happened, but not aware of all of a sudden some new. Now, if a new management company comes in or a new owner, that might be different. But somebody that is a facility leader, a director of golf or general manager, is typically not going to change, whether or not an event's going to be held. At least not in our world. Maybe at a very high end, private club, but if we're managing it, I'm not aware of those things happening.
Yeah. So I have another question that I'm going to direct at Tim, and I don't want to put you on the spot, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this, but is there a certain type of event that is more appealing to a club? Like, for example, are juniors always going to be more appealing to a club than adult men? Or because women is such a strong area to grow the market right now, is that going to be a more appealing event than a senior men's event? Or is that even something that clubs really think about?
I think it varies depending on your location and the club, but even within your environment, within your market, you might be known as the family-friendly club, or you might be known as the players club. So it really kind of depends on what the golf course is. If it's a municipal course which we manage, maybe we're trying to go ahead and help the city recharge the golf industry, because now Indigo, which used to be called Billy Casper Golf, is now under the Troon umbrella. So I would say it varies completely depending on the facility and the community and all these different variables. So I would not hesitate to say, hey, but to anybody, the worst a club could say is, hey, it's not a good fit for us. Or if it's not a good fit, could there be a time that it could be a good fit? Maybe it's just the time of the year. We've gone over that before, or the day of the week. And maybe they don't understand that the event is a lot smaller than they kind of imagine it in their mind. So it's a 25-person, event instead of 144 people. So really just getting all the details. And I would say that if you're, dealing with a professional, at the facility, they're going to ask those questions. They're going to uncover really what they need to know. Hopefully that's the way it works. And it works out for everybody, because we're always trying to create win-win situations for the people that are hosting the event and the facilities.
Yeah, well, and I think much like we've talked about on other sessions of the Warm Conference, where not every golfer wants to be a championship level golfer. Not every golfer is seeking to become a single-digit handicap that is competing at the U.S. Amateur. Not every facility is looking for that cutthroat championship, single-digit championship style event. You're right, Chris. Tim. Some places may be family friendly, and they'd rather host a parent-child event where their membership as a family can get involved. So that's a really great point to.
Yeah, and even 9-hole events. I mean, back to I know you don't do a lot of 9-hole championship events, but can you make it family friendly and play 9 holes and it's not so time consuming? And with people's so busy schedule, I mean, I've got a daughter and a family. I know, everybody has different commitments, but time is really critical. So if you can make an event that is, not so time consuming and fun and more inclusive, then, I think that's a win for a lot of people.
Great.
So I think we're getting close to wrapping up. Sarah, I don't know if we've had any questions come in, or if anybody on the call wants to pop in with a question of some kind.
We don't have any questions right now, but if you have a quick question, we'll give it a minute in the chat or the Q&A. Yes, we've covered everything. There's no questions.
One other note I had, it was back to, I think one of the hardest things for all of us is just the budgeting and figuring out pricing for the host clubs. And one thing we try to do a lot of, especially for our bigger championships, is share past invoices and what we've done at other clubs. And I think a lot of the times there might be some invoices you want to hide because it was so expensive you don't want to do it again. But it's helpful for the club a lot of the time to get, okay, this is what they did and this is how they did it, and really see the breakdown. So that's been helpful for us in the past. And I think it's a good way, especially when you're running the same type of events each year. And maybe one year you were at a very high-end club who gave you great pricing, and it's a nice way to show another club of, hey, they put on a great product and they were able to do it within these confines. So I really like Aaron's strategy of giving a lump sum, and I think showing some of the past invoices gives them a little more insight into exactly what was done. And a lot of times it's helped to break through some tough conversations of how can we do this within this budget, and to really show them what another club might have done with that same budget.
That's a great tip. That's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I would think most of us would think, like you said, Chris, when you see that invoice from one of your higher end clubs, maybe, and it did cost you a lot of money, but it was worth it because it was the club was worth the cost. Sharing that with another facility could seem a little scary, but on their end, it's then now putting the ball in their court of like, this is how great we had it. Here's what we can do with a budget. If you guys need to live up to that.
Yeah, and you can kind of see 2 ways. It's the keeping up with the Joneses of like, they did this to try to do the same. But I think a lot of the time too, for the GM, it's helpful to conceptualize everything that's out there, and they can just see it all itemized on a bill. And I've had it plenty of times where it's like, it's great they could do all that, but we're going to need to charge this much more to do it. But I think it helps the conversation flow a little more, because we've all had it where somebody's jaw might drop because of the pricing we're talking about is not for profits versus some of these very high-end corporate outings, and we're not the high-end corporate outing. So it's important to try to paint that picture and maybe show it with what we've done in the past.
Yeah. Or maybe they think you need the really robust lunch and the lobster tail and the this and the that. And, it's a junior event and they want chicken fingers and French fries.
Yeah.
So, know your audience.
Yeah. Great point.
All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up here. So thank you so much for attending our third installment of the Warm Virtual Conference, and a very special thank you to Chris Gaffney of the MGA and Tim Rose of Troon for joining us today and sharing your advice. Thank you to Erin for leading this engaging conversation, and we hope to see you on April 13th for our fourth and final webinar of the 2021 Warm Virtual Conference with a session on mentoring. The registration link is on our website, womensgolfalliance.org. So we hope to see you then. And thank you so much for attending.
Thanks. Have a great day, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Erin.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks, Sarah.
See you soon.